On October 3, 2023, neighbors in Nuremberg found 54-year-old Petra Hoffmann dead in her apartment. Her body had already decomposed so severely that forensic medicine initially assumed natural death, until toxicological tests revealed a lethal dose of arsenic in her tissue 3 months after she had returned from Afghanistan, where she had married a man who systematically poisoned her. What had begun as a late romance of a lonely widow with a charming Afghan engineer turned out to be cold-blooded murder by a man who exploited her, longing for love to obtain German resident status, and then slowly kill her so that her life insurance and inheritance would belong to him. Petra Hoffmann was a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others. For 32 years, she worked as a nurse at Nuremberg Hospital, where she was known for her patience with difficult patients and her unwavering empathy. With her warm blue eyes, silver gray curls, and gentle smile, she embodied the ideal of the caring healer. Her life was characterized by routine and sense of duty, getting up at 6 in the morning, 8 hours at the hospital, household chores, and television in the evening. After her husband Klaus's death 4 years ago, this routine had become her only support, but also her prison. Klaus Hoffmann had died of cancer at only 48 and had left an emptiness in Petra's life that she didn't know how to fill. Her only son Michael lived in Hamburg, was busy with his own family, and called only on birthdays and holidays. The early retirement that was supposed to be a gift became a confrontation with her loneliness for Petra. The colleagues she had seen for decades were suddenly gone. The patients she had cared for no longer needed her. Her days stretched endlessly, filled only by the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of television. It was this desperate longing for meaning and closeness that made her susceptible to the story of Ahmad Rahimi, a man who had perfected the art of manipulation into a deadly science. Ahmad was 30 years old, born in Kabul into a family that had operated for generations in the border area between legal trade and criminal business. With his dark hair, expressive eyes, and well-groomed beard, he fit the image of the educated, Western-oriented Afghan who had fled from the Taliban. In truth, Ahmad had never fled from the Taliban. He was an opportunist who used the chaos in his country to create new identities for himself and exploit naive Western women. His family had connections to smuggling networks that brought not only drugs and weapons, but also people across borders. For Ahmad, Petra was not the love of his life, but a ticket to Germany, German citizenship, and access to Western prosperity. His methods were coldly calculated: emotional manipulation, slow poisoning, and finally murder, disguised as the natural death of an older woman. The story of Petra and Ahmad is a shocking example of how international marriage migration can be abused and how perpetrators use the most basic human needs for love, security, and belonging as deadly weapons. It was a rainy March day in 2023 when Petra Hoffmann first received a message from Ahmad Rahimi. She had reluctantly signed up for International Hearts, a dating platform for people seeking love beyond national borders. "You're too old for online dating," she had reproached herself while creating her profile. But loneliness had been stronger than her pride, and the prospect of contact with interesting people from other cultures had tempted her. Ahmad's first message was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. "Dear Petra, your profile has touched me deeply. A woman who has dedicated her life to healing others deserves healing for her own lonely heart. I am Ahmad, a civil engineer from Kabul, and I believe that God has brought us together. In my culture, we honor women like you as the true pillars of society." Petra read the message several times. The poetic language, the respect, the spiritual note, everything appealed to her. After years of loneliness, she finally felt seen and appreciated again. Her response was cautious. "Dear Ahmad, thank you for your warm words. Tell me more about you and your life in Afghanistan." What followed were weeks of intensive correspondence. Ahmad proved to be an eloquent writer who skillfully combined Petra's Christian faith with Islamic concepts. "In my religion, as in yours, marriage is a sacred bond," he wrote. "Allah and your God see no boundaries between peoples, only the love between two souls." He told of his engineering studies in Kabul, of the bridges and buildings he had designed, and of his dream of using his knowledge in a more peaceful country. His stories were full of details that underlined his credibility. "Last month I renovated a school in a village outside Kabul," he reported. The children had previously had lessons under a tent, When I saw how their eyes lit up in the new classrooms, I knew that my work had meaning. Petra was enchanted by his mixture of professional success and social responsibility. Here was a man who, like her, dedicated his life to helping others. After a month, they suggested speaking via video. Petra was nervous. She had never spoken to a man from the Middle East and didn't know what to expect. Ahmad exceeded all her expectations. He spoke perfect English with a British accent, which he had allegedly developed during his supposed studies in London. He wore Western clothing, was clean-shaven, and seemed like a successful businessman. "You are beautiful, Petra," he said with a voice that seemed to vibrate with sincerity. "In my country, one would say you have the eyes of an angel." During their 2-hour conversation, he showed her his supposed office in Kabul, a modernly furnished room with technical drawings on the walls. He spoke about his projects, his dreams, and his loneliness as an educated man in a torn country. "Sometimes I wonder if it's possible to find true love in a world full of hate and war," he said thoughtfully. "But then I see your face, and I believe in miracles again." Petra felt flattered and moved. Here was a man who, despite all adversities, had preserved his humanity and was ready to open his heart to a foreign woman. What she didn't know: Ahmad's office was a rented room in an internet cafe. The technical drawings were downloaded from the internet, and he had learned his perfect English, not in London, but from American soldiers for whom he had worked as a translator and informant. In the following weeks, their relationship deepened. Ahmad called her daily, sent her photos of his supposed projects, and shared intimate details of his life with her. "My parents were killed in a bombing," he told her with a tear-choked voice. "I only have one sister left, but she is married to a Taliban sympathizer. I am practically alone in the world." This story activated Petra's protective instincts. She knew the feeling of being alone, and her heart opened to this vulnerable man who, despite everything, had not lost his faith and love. "You are not alone," she said gently. "You have me." Ahmad's eyes filled with feigned tears. "Petra, you give me hope. For the first time in years, I think about a future, not just about survival." After 3 months of intensive online relationship, Ahmad made the decisive step. He declared his love to Petra with a passion that completely overwhelmed her. "My heart belongs to you," he said during a late-night video call. "In my culture, that means more than just words. It means I am ready to give my life for you." Petra was speechless. Finding great love at 54 was more than she had dared to dream. If true crimes fascinate you, then subscribe to this channel. We expose the darkest sides of human manipulation and show how to protect yourself from such deadly traps. After Ahmad's declaration of love, their relationship intensified dramatically. He began to speak of a shared future and painted pictures of a life that exceeded Petra's boldest dreams. "Imagine," he enthused during one of their evening conversations, "we could build schools and hospitals together. You with your medical experience, I with my technical knowledge. We could help people who really need it." For Petra, who had felt useless since her retirement, this was an enticing vision. Finally, her life would have meaning again. Ahmad was too clever to rush too quickly. Instead, he systematically built up emotional dependencies and simultaneously weakened her connections to her German environment. "How is your relationship with your son?" he asked casually one evening. Petra sighed. "Michael is very busy with his family and his job. We talk, but he has little time for his old mother." Ahmad frowned. "I don't understand that. In our culture, family is sacred. A son would never neglect his mother." "That's how it is in Germany today," Petra said sadly. "Family no longer comes first." "You deserve more respect," Ahmad replied firmly. "You have dedicated your life to serving others. That should be honored, not ignored." Such conversations reinforced Petra's feeling of alienation from her German environment and made Ahmad and his world appear as a warm-hearted alternative. After 6 months of online relationship, Ahmad implemented the next part of his plan. He began to carefully address his difficult situation in Afghanistan. "The situation here is becoming increasingly dangerous," he told her with a worried expression. "Last week, Taliban fighters searched the office building. They are looking for people like me who have worked with the West." Petra was alarmed. "Are you in danger?" "I try not to think about it," Ahmad replied bravely. "But sometimes I think it would be safer if I could find a way to come to Europe." This was the first cautious hint at his true plan. Ahmad knew that he couldn't suggest the idea of marriage and migration too directly. Over the following weeks, He intensified the image of his threat in Afghanistan. He told of nocturnal searches, of friends who had disappeared, and of the growing danger for educated Afghans like him. "Sometimes I dream of a place where we can be together," he said with melancholy voice, "where I don't have to be afraid every day, and where we can build our life." Petra felt torn between her desire to help Ahmad and the practical impossibility of bringing him to Germany. "Isn't there any possibility for a visa?" she asked helplessly. Ahmad shook his head sadly. "For Afghans, it's almost impossible. The only chance would be," he hesitated, as if expressing a forbidden thought. "What?" Petra pressed. "Well, if I were married to a German citizen, I could apply for family reunification, but that's just a dream." This remark planted the seed in Petra's mind. In the following nights, she thought about the possibility. Was it crazy to marry a man she only knew online? But wasn't it even crazier to leave the great love of her life to bureaucrats and terrorists? Ahmed was too experienced to force the issue. Instead, he concentrated on deepening their emotional bond and dispelling her doubts. "Petra," he said one evening with great seriousness, "I must tell you something important. I know that our situation is unusual, an Afghan man and a German woman, separated by thousands of kilometers. But my feelings for you are real." He paused and looked directly at her through the camera. "In my religion, marriage is a sacred bond before God. I would never speak lightly about such a thing. But I love you, Petra, and if there were a way—" "What way?" Petra asked with a pounding heart. "You could come to Kabul," Ahmad said hesitantly. "We could marry there. Then we could try together to go to Germany." The idea of traveling to Afghanistan was both frightening and exciting for Petra. She had never visited a country like Afghanistan, barely knew the culture, and spoke no Dari. "Isn't that too dangerous for a German woman?" she asked. "With me by your side, you will be completely safe," Ahmed assured her. "My family will protect you like a daughter, and the German embassy is only an hour away." Over the following weeks, Ahmed systematically convinced Petra that a trip to Afghanistan was the only way for their shared future. "I understand your fears," he said understandingly. "But see it this way. You have helped others your whole life. Now it's time for someone to help you become happy." He painted romantic pictures of their wedding in Kabul, a traditional Afghan ceremony with music, dance, and a celebration that would last for days. "You will be the most beautiful bride Kabul has ever seen," he enthused. "My family will love you, and you will understand why I lost my heart to the most warm-hearted woman in the world." Slowly but steadily, Ahmad broke down Petra's resistance. Her longing for love and adventure was stronger than her caution, and his skillful manipulations made all practical concerns seem secondary. In September 2023, after 8 months of online relationship, Petra booked her flight to Kabul. She was nervous, but full of anticipation for the greatest adventure of her life. What she didn't suspect, Ahmad and his family had already made detailed plans for her stay, plans that went far beyond a simple wedding and would end with her slow poisoning. On September 15, 2023, Petra Hoffman landed at Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul. After more than 20 hours of travel with stopovers in Istanbul and Delhi, she was exhausted but full of expectation for the reunion with Ahmad. The airport was chaotic and overwhelming. Armed Taliban fighters controlled the entrances, and the atmosphere was tense. Petra felt out of place in her Western clothing among the veiled women and bearded men. Ahmad was waiting in the arrivals area with a big smile and a bouquet of flowers. He wore traditional Afghan clothing, a long white tunic, and an embroidered vest, and looked even more exotic and attractive than in the videos. "My beloved Petra," he said, and embraced her carefully, conscious of cultural sensitivity. "Welcome to Afghanistan. You are even more beautiful than I imagined." The embrace felt right, familiar despite the foreign environment. Ahmad led her through the airport with the confidence of a man who was at home everywhere. The car that picked them up was an old Toyota with tinted windows. The driver, Ahmad's supposed cousin Rashid, spoke no English, but greeted Petra kindly in Dari. "Rashid is very happy to meet you," Ahmad translated. "He says you have beautiful eyes like his deceased mother." During the drive through Kabul, Ahmad showed her the city. The streets were dusty and crowded, lined with stalls, markets, and damaged buildings. It was another world, fascinating and frightening at the same time. "It was different before the Taliban return," Ahmed explained with sadness in his voice. "Kabul was once a vibrant, modern city. Now we all have to be careful. Their first accommodation was a traditional house in a quiet neighborhood. It supposedly belonged to Ahmad's family and was elegantly furnished with carpets, carved furniture, and ornate decorations. "This is our family house," Ahmad explained proudly. "My grandfather built it when Kabul was still peaceful." Petra was impressed by the beauty of the house, but also surprised by its size and obvious value. For the family of a simple engineer, it was very luxurious. "Your family must be very successful," she remarked. Ahmad waved modestly. "We have always worked hard and saved. In Afghanistan, family is everything." On the first evening, Petra met Ahmad's supposed family. His Aunt Mariam, an older woman with kind eyes, greeted her warmly. His uncle Hassan seemed more reserved but respectful. "They are very happy to meet you," Ahmad translated during dinner. "Mariam says she can understand why I fell in love with you." The food was delicious rice with saffron, tender lamb, and sweet desserts. The family treated Petra like an honored guest, and she felt welcome despite the language barrier. The first 3 days in Kabul went like a fairy tale dream. Ahmad led her through the old city, showed her the markets, and brought her to historical sites. He was an attentive guide who took care of her safety and well-being. But Petra noticed small inconsistencies. The engineering office that Ahmad wanted to show her didn't exist at the given address. His stories about current projects didn't match what she saw on site. "You must understand," Ahmad explained when she asked, "since the Taliban are back, much has changed. Many offices are closed. Projects have been stopped." Petra nodded understandingly. She had heard in the news about the difficult situation in Afghanistan. On the fourth day, the wedding ceremony took place. It was a traditional Afghan celebration in the family house, with about 30 guests, relatives, and neighbors who greeted Petra kindly but reservedly. Petra wore a beautiful red dress that Mariam had chosen for her. Ahmad was dressed in an elegant tunica, and they looked like a fairy tale couple. The ceremony was conducted by an imam who spoke in Dari. Ahmad translated the important parts: the vows, the blessings, and the declaration of their marriage before God and witnesses. "We are now husband and wife," Ahmad whispered in her ear as the imam blessed them, "forever connected, in good times and bad." Petra was overwhelmed with emotions. At 54, she had married, and that in one of the most exotic countries in the world. It felt like the beginning of a completely new life. The celebration lasted late into the night. There was music, dancing, and abundant food. Petra felt like a princess, surrounded by people celebrating her connection with Ahmad. But what Petra didn't know, most of the family members were paid actors. The imam was a criminal from Ahmad's network. And the marriage was a skillfully staged theatrical performance that served only one purpose: to ensure her complete emotional attachment and legal obligation. On the wedding night, Ahmad began the first phase of his deadly plan. He mixed a tiny amount of arsenic into the traditional tea they drank together. "To our new life," he said, raising his cup. "To our love," Petra replied and drank. The arsenic was in such small doses that she tasted nothing. But in her body began a slow, merciless process that would weaken her over months and finally kill her. The weeks after the wedding were a time of happiness and adjustment for Petra. She lived as Ahmad Rahimi's wife in the family house in Kabul and got to know Afghan culture. Ahmad was the perfect husband, attentive, loving, and proud to show her his world. "You are now an Afghan," he said laughingly while teaching her to prepare traditional tea. "My family already loves you like a daughter." Petra flourished in this role. For the first time since Klaus's death, she felt needed and loved again. She helped Mariam with cooking, learned some scraps of Dari, and enjoyed the warmth of the supposed extended family. But after about 2 weeks, Petra noticed the first subtle changes in her body. She felt more tired than usual and occasionally had nausea, especially in the mornings. "Maybe it's the climate," Ahmad said worriedly when she complained about it. "Or the spicy food. Your German stomach must first adjust." He was full of care, brought her special herbal teas, and made sure she got enough rest. What Petra didn't know, these herbal teas contained further doses of arsenic that intensified her symptoms. "Mariam made this tea for you," Ahmad said, handing her a steaming cup. "It helps against nausea and strengthens the stomach." Petra drank gratefully. The tea tasted bitter, but she attributed that to the foreign herbs. Ahmad assured her that all Afghan women drank such teas to strengthen their health. After a month in Afghanistan, her symptoms became more pronounced. She frequently had diarrhea, Her hair began to fall out, and she felt weak and confused. Sometimes she forgot things or couldn't concentrate on conversations. "I'm worried," she told Ahmed. "Maybe I should see a doctor." Ahmad seemed alarmed. "No, that's not necessary. Afghan doctors are, not like German doctors. Besides, the Taliban might ask questions about why a German woman needs medical help." Instead, he brought her to a traditional healer, an old man named Hakim, who supposedly healed with herbs and prayers. Hakim was, in reality, another accomplice in Ahmad's network. He examined Petra superficially and then explained in Derry that she suffered from an imbalance of body fluids that could be cured with special treatments. "He says your body is still fighting against the changes," Ahmad translated. "This is normal for European women who come to Afghanistan. He will give you medicine." The medicine were further arsenic, containing preparations disguised as traditional Afghan remedies. Petra took them trustingly, convinced that they would help her. "How long will it take until I feel better?" she asked weakly. "Be patient," Ahmad replied lovingly. "Healing takes time, but I am with you, whatever happens." After 6 weeks in Afghanistan, Petra had become noticeably weaker. She had lost several kilograms, her skin was yellowish, and she had difficulties walking. Her mental clarity fluctuated. Sometimes she was completely normal, sometimes confused and disoriented. Ahmad skillfully exploited this confusion. He began to pressure her to sign important financial documents. "Dearest," he said on a day when Petra was particularly weak, "I have spoken with the German embassy about our family reunification. They need some documents from you." He laid several documents before her, supposedly applications for his visa to Germany. In reality, they were powers of attorney that gave him access to her German bank account and a change to her life insurance that named him as beneficiary. "My head is so confused," Petra complained. "Can't you simply explain what I should sign?" "Of course, my love," Ahmad replied patiently. "This here is for my visa, this for your bank account. We need joint access for the time in Germany, and this is for the insurance, in case something happens to you." Petra signed everything without hesitation. In her weakened state, she trusted Ahmad completely and didn't have the mental clarity to examine the documents more carefully. "You take such good care of me," she murmured gratefully. "What would I do without you?" "You will never be without me," Ahmad replied and kissed her forehead. "We belong together, forever." After 2 months in Afghanistan, Petra's condition had become so bad that even Ahmad noticed he needed to slow his pace. If she died too quickly, it might arouse suspicion. He reduced the arsenic doses and concentrated on manipulating her psychologically. "Petra, I'm very worried about you. Maybe we should consider returning to Germany so you can get proper medical treatment." "But what about your visa?" Petra asked weakly. "That will take months more," Ahmad replied sadly. "But your health is more important. You could fly home, recover, and I'll follow as soon as the papers are ready." The separation from Ahmad after only 2 months of marriage was painful for Petra, but she longed for the safety and medical care in Germany. "I don't want to go without you," she said, crying. "It's only for a short time," Ahmad comforted her. "As soon as I have my visa, we'll be together again, and then our real life in Germany begins." On November 20, 2023, Petra flew back to Nuremberg. Ahmad accompanied her to the airport and said goodbye with feigned tears. "Don't forget me," he whispered in her ear. "You are my life, my soul." "Never," Petra replied. "I love you." What she didn't know, Ahmad had given her a strengthening medicine for the journey capsules that contained a concentrated dose of arsenic. "Take one every day," he had said. "They will help you recover faster at home." Petra landed on November 21, 2023, in Germany, after more than 2 months in Afghanistan. She was noticeably weaker than when she left, had lost 10 kilograms, and suffered from various symptoms she couldn't categorize. Her son Michael picked her up from the airport and was shocked by her appearance. "My God, Mom, what happened to you?" he asked worriedly as he brought her to her apartment. "The climate in Afghanistan was hard for me," Petra replied weakly, "but Ahmad took good care of me. It was the most beautiful time of my life." Michael looked at his mother skeptically. She didn't look like someone who had just spent the most beautiful time of her life. She was pale, her hair had become thinner, and her eyes had lost the sparkle he knew from before. "Did you see a doctor in Afghanistan?" he asked. "Ahmad brought me to a traditional healer," Petra explained. "He said it was just an adjustment reaction. With time, I would recover." Michael urged her to see a German doctor, but Petra objected. Ahmad gave me medicine to take with me. He's an engineer, but he understands a lot about health. I trust him. In the following days, Petra's condition stabilized slightly. Without the daily arsenic doses from the herbal teas, some of her symptoms began to subside, but she continued to take daily the capsules Ahmad had given her. Ahmad called her every day from Kabul and inquired about her condition. "How do you feel, my love? Are you taking the medicine regularly?" "Yes," Petra replied obediently. "But I miss you so much. When will you finally get your visa? The German embassy is very slow." Ahmad sighed. "But I work on it every day. Soon we'll be together again." What Petra didn't know, Ahmad had never applied for a visa. Instead, he used the time to drain her German bank accounts and identify further victims. In the third week after her return, Petra's condition deteriorated dramatically again. The concentrated arsenic doses from the capsules worked stronger than the diluted teas in Afghanistan. She developed severe abdominal pain. Her skin took on a yellowish coloration, and she suffered from confusion and memory loss. Sometimes she didn't know what day it was or forgot that she was in Germany. Michael became increasingly worried. "Mom, you must go to a doctor. This doesn't look like a normal cold." But Petra refused stubbornly. "Ahmad says German doctors don't understand Afghan illnesses. His medicine will help. I just have to be patient." Ahmad reinforced this conviction during their daily phone calls. "European doctors won't understand what happened to you in Afghanistan," he warned her. "They might give the wrong treatment and make everything even worse." He skillfully played with her fears of the German health system and her dependence on him as her husband and expert for her situation. At the end of December 2023, 6 weeks after her return, Petra's condition had become critical. She could barely walk, regularly forgot important things, and had hallucinations. "I sometimes see Klaus," she told Michael, frightened. "He stands at the end of my bed and says I should come with him." Michael was alarmed. "Mom, those are hallucinations. You must go to the hospital immediately." But Petra refused. "No, Ahmed says that's normal. It's the spirit cleansing itself from the Afghan experience." Michael decided to confront Ahmad directly. He called the number his mother always dialed and demanded to speak with her husband. "Michael," Ahmad said with feigned warmth, "how is my beloved wife?" "She's very sick," Michael replied directly. "She urgently needs medical help. What the hell happened to her in Afghanistan?" Ahmed remained calm. "Your mother has gone through a difficult spiritual awakening. In Afghanistan, we call it Ruka Safar, the journey of the soul. It's painful, but healing." "That's nonsense," Michael exploded. "My mother is dying, and you talk about spiritual journeys?" "I understand your concern," Ahmad replied patiently. "But you must understand that Western medicine isn't always the answer. Petra is going through a transformation." Michael hung up angrily, but he was powerless. His mother was an adult woman who could make her own decisions, even if these decisions were killing her. In the first days of January 2024, Petra was too weak to leave the bed. She could hardly eat anymore and often spoke incoherently. But Ahmad kept her from seeking medical help. "Just a little more patience, my love," he said during their phone calls. "The healing is almost complete. Soon you will feel stronger than ever." Ahmad knew that Petra was close to death. The months-long arsenic poisoning had irreversibly damaged her organs, but he wanted to ensure that her death looked like a natural disease progression. "Keep taking the medicine," he urged. "And if you feel very bad, take more of it. It will help." Petra obeyed blindly. She took not only one capsule daily, but sometimes 2 or 3, convinced that more medicine meant faster healing. On October 1, 2023, Petra took her last dose of Ahmed's medicine. She was so weak that she could barely swallow the capsules. "Ahmad," she whispered into the phone. "I think I'm dying." "You're not dying," Ahmad lied gently. "You're being reborn, like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon." These poetic metaphors calmed Petra in her last hours. She died on October 3, 2023, believing that her death was part of a spiritual transformation that her husband understood and guided. Petra Hoffman was found dead in her apartment on October 3, 2023, by her neighbor, Mrs. Weber. The elderly lady had been concerned because she hadn't noticed any signs of life from Petra for several days. "The mail was piling up in front of her door," Mrs. Weber later told the police, "and there was a strange smell in the stairwell." When police opened the apartment, they found Petra's body in her bed. The decomposition process was already well advanced. indicating that she had been dead for several days. At first glance, it looked like natural death, reported the first officer on scene. An elderly woman, no sign of violence, no signs of burglary. Commissioner Uwe Richter of the Nuremberg Criminal Police took over the case. The 50-year-old investigator had over 20 years of experience and a sharp eye for details that others might overlook. During the first examination of the apartment, several things struck him. Petra's weight loss was extreme. Her clothes hung on her like on a skeleton. On her bedside table were various pill bottles with Arabic inscriptions. "What is this stuff?" he asked his partner, Commissioner Jung. "Looks like Oriental medicine," Jung replied after looking at the labels. Maybe she was seeing a naturopath. Michael Hoffman was contacted as next of kin and arrived from Hamburg the next day. He was visibly shaken, but also angry. "I saw it coming," he told Commissioner Richter. "My mother traveled to Afghanistan in September to marry a man she only knew online. When she came back, she was sick and confused." "Afghanistan?" Richter asked, surprised. "That's unusual for a German retiree." Michael told the whole story. The online romance, the hasty marriage, Petra's deterioration after her return, and her refusal to see a doctor. "This Ahmad convinced her not to seek medical help," Michael explained bitterly. He said German doctors wouldn't understand her Afghan illness. Richter noted all details carefully. His experience told him that something wasn't right here, but he needed evidence. "Do you have contact with this Ahmad?" he asked. "I have his phone number," Michael replied. "But I doubt his story is true." The autopsy was performed by Dr. Lena Berger, an experienced forensic pathologist at the Nuremberg Institute of Legal Medicine. What she found set off all alarm bells. "The body shows all classic signs of chronic arsenic poisoning," she reported to Commissioner Richter. "Hair loss, hyperpigmentation of the skin, damage to liver and kidneys." "Arsenic?" Richter asked. "How does a German retiree get arsenic?" "That's the million-euro question," Dr. Berger replied. "But the concentration in her tissue is extremely high. This was no accident." Toxicological tests confirmed Dr. Berger's suspicion. Petra's body contained lethal amounts of arsenic that had been absorbed over an extended period. "Someone systematically poisoned this woman," Dr. Berger explained at the final briefing. "The arsenic levels in her hair show continuous exposure over at least 4 months. Richter calculated quickly. 4 months brought them back to June 2023, exactly the time before Petra's trip to Afghanistan. "Can arsenic occur in traditional medicine?" he asked. "Theoretically, yes," Dr. Berger replied. "Some Asian remedies contain traces of arsenic, but not in these concentrations. This here was intentional." Richter had the pills analyzed that were found in Petra's apartment. The result confirmed his worst fears. All contained high concentrations of arsenic, skillfully disguised as herbal extracts. "We're dealing with murder," he announced to his team. "Now we need to find out who Ahmad Rahimi really island." The investigations to Afghanistan proved difficult. The country was in political chaos, German authorities had limited contacts, and the Taliban government was not cooperative with foreign police requests. Richter turned to the Federal Criminal Police Office and Interpol for help. "We need everything you can find about an Ahmad Rahimi from Kabul," he requested. "Engineer, about 30 years old, married to a German citizen." The response came after 2 weeks and was sobering. "There are no records of an Ahmad Rahimi with the given characteristics in the Afghan databases. The identity could be fake." Richter was not surprised. He had already suspected that Ahmad Rahimi was not who he claimed to be. Meanwhile, his team investigated Petra's finances and made shocking discoveries. In the months before her death, a total of 15,000 euros had been withdrawn from her accounts, all transferred to various accounts in the Middle East. "She wasn't just murdered, but also robbed," Commissioner Jung noted. "This guy systematically cleaned her out." Even more shocking was the discovery that Petra's life insurance had been changed. Ahmad Rahimi had been entered as beneficiary, with a payout of 100,000 euros. "He planned her death from the beginning," Richter told his team. "This wasn't spontaneous murder, but an elaborate fraud." The investigations into Ahmad Rahimi's true identity led Commissioner Richter into a labyrinth of false names, forged documents, and international connections. It quickly became clear that they were dealing not with a single perpetrator, but with an organized network. "Ahmad Rahimi doesn't exist," reported a contact at Interpol. "But we have similar cases in other European countries, always the same pattern: online romance, marriage in Afghanistan or Pakistan, Poisoned European women. Richter received files on 5 similar cases from the past 3 years. A French woman who had died of mysterious symptoms after a marriage in Kabul. An Italian woman who had traveled to Afghanistan and disappeared. A Belgian woman who had returned from Pakistan seriously ill and barely survived. This is an international operation, Richter recognized. These men specialize in lonely European women and have perfected their system. The Federal Criminal Police Office formed a special commission that specialized in this type of international marriage fraud. Richter was appointed head of the German investigations. Through analysis of digital traces, IP addresses, phone numbers, money transfers, the investigators succeeded in creating a profile of the organization. The network operated from various locations in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Turkey, and had connections to money laundering and drug trafficking operations. They use romantic manipulation as a cover for more complex criminal activities, explained a BKA analyst. The women are not only victims of fraud, but are used as mules for money laundering and possibly smuggling. A breakthrough came when French authorities arrested a man named Karim Nasseri, who was suspected of being involved in similar crimes. Under pressure, Nasseri confessed to being part of a larger network. Ahmad is not his real name, Nasseri confessed. He's called Mahmoud Qasemi and leads a group of about 10 men. They specialize in German and French women because they have the highest life insurances. Nasseri revealed that the network proceeded systematically. First, they identified potential victims on dating sites, then built emotional bonds for months, lured the women to their countries, and began slow poisoning. Arsenic is their preferred poison, Nasseri explained. It works slowly, and the symptoms can be confused with various diseases. Most doctors initially think of natural causes. The insights from Nasseri's statement enabled investigators to determine Mahmoud Qasemi's real identity. He was a 32-year-old Afghan with a long history of fraud and violent crimes. Qasemi already served 8 years in Iran for similar crimes, reported an Interpol contact. After his release, he returned to Afghanistan and expanded his operation there. Richter coordinated with Afghan contacts, as far as that was possible under the Taliban government. A former Afghan police officer, now working as a private investigator, confirmed Qasemi's presence in Kabul. He lives in a big house in Wazir Akbar Khan, the contact reported. Very expensive, very well guarded. He presents himself as a successful businessman. German authorities issued an international arrest warrant for Mahmoud Qasemi, but his arrest in Afghanistan was unlikely. The Taliban government did not cooperate with Western law enforcement agencies, and Qasemi probably had protection through local power brokers. "We can't get him directly," Richter said frustratedly to his team, "but we can destroy his network and save other victims." The investigations led to the identification of 12 additional women in various European countries who were in contact with members of Qasemi's network. Some of them were already planning trips to Afghanistan or Pakistan. "We intervened just in time," said a French colleague after they prevented a woman from Lyon from traveling to Kabul. She had already bought her plane ticket. International media reported on the case, and dating platforms were urged to tighten their security measures. But Richter knew this was only the tip of the iceberg. "For every man we identify, there are 10 others," he warned at a press conference. "These networks are highly organized and adapt quickly." Michael Hoffman was informed about the progress of the investigations. He was relieved to know that his mother had not been the only victim, but frustrated about the difficulty of achieving justice. "My mother is dead, and the man who murdered her sits in Afghanistan and probably plans his next victim already," he said bitterly. "What good are all investigations if we can't bring him to court?" Richter could understand his frustration, but he also knew that their work was already bearing fruit. "We have built an international manhunt network," he explained. "If Qasemi or his associates ever leave a country where we can catch him, we will be ready." Moreover, the team worked on preventive measures. They developed awareness campaigns for lonely women, improved cooperation between dating platforms and law enforcement agencies, and trained medical personnel to recognize arsenic poisoning earlier. "We can't bring Petra back," Richter told Michael, "but we can ensure that her death saves other women." 8 months after Petra's death, international investigators achieved a decisive breakthrough. Mahmoud Qasemi, who had posed as Ahmad Rahimi, made a fatal mistake. He left Afghanistan and traveled to Turkey to establish a new operation. "We got him," Commissioner Richter called out excitedly when the call from Interpol came. Kasemi has been arrested in Istanbul. Turkish authorities will extradite him to Germany. The arrest was the result of months of patient police work. A network of informants and surveillance operations had tracked Kasemi's movements until he finally made a mistake. "He got greedy," explained a Turkish investigator. "He wanted to move his operation to Europe and walked into our trap in the process." Kasemi was arrested in a luxury hotel in Istanbul, where he was registered under the name Dr. Reza Ahmadi. During the search of his belongings, investigators found a laptop full of compromising evidence. Hundreds of emails with European women, reported a computer specialist, detailed plans for new operations in Germany, France, and Italy, and photos of at least 20 victims, including Petra Hoffmann. The extradition to Germany took another 3 months, but in July 2024, Mahmoud Kasemi was finally brought to Nuremberg. During his first interrogation by Commissioner Richter, he appeared arrogant and uncooperative. "You have nothing against me," he claimed in broken German. "Petra was my wife. I loved her." "You murdered her," Richter replied coldly. "We have the evidence. The arsenic poisoning, the fake medications, the manipulated insurance documents." Kasemi shrugged. "German medicine is not good for Afghan women. I gave her traditional healing." "Traditional healing with arsenic?" Richter asked skeptically. "You don't understand our culture," Kasemi replied evasively. But when Richter presented him with the evidence, the emails with other victims, the financial records, statements from accomplices, Kasemi's confidence began to crumble. "How many women have you killed?" Richter asked directly. Kasemi was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Petra was an accident. She wasn't supposed to die." "What was supposed to happen then?" "She was supposed to get sick, return to Germany, and I would care for her, as a loving husband. Then I would get a visa." "And then?" Kasemi hesitated. "Then she could have gotten healthy again. Or not." This partial confession was the first crack in Kasemi's defense. In the following interrogations, confronted with overwhelming evidence and statements from his arrested accomplices, he finally confessed his involvement in Petra's murder and similar crimes against other European women. "I killed 5 women, he finally confessed, but it was never personal. It was just business." This cold-blooded statement shocked even the experienced investigators. Kasemi spoke about human lives as if they were goods in a business. "Which 5 women?" Richter asked. Kasemi listed names: Petra from Germany, Marie from France, Sophia from Italy, and 2 other women from Belgium and the Netherlands. All had similar stories, lonely widows or divorced women who had searched for love and found death. "How did you poison them all?" Richter wanted to know. "Arsenic is easy to obtain in Afghanistan," Kasemi explained emotionlessly. "You mix it in tea, in medicine, in spices. The women notice nothing until it's too late." The international cooperation triggered by Petra's case led to the arrest of 8 additional members of Kasemi's network. The entire system that had exploited European women for years was dismantled. "This is the greatest success against international marriage fraudsters we've ever had," announced the head of the BKA at a press conference. But it also shows how sophisticated and brutal these organizations have become. The trial against Mahmoud Kasemi began in March 2025, a year and a half after Petra's death. The courtroom in Nuremberg was packed with journalists, relatives of victims, and representatives from various European law enforcement agencies. Kasemi appeared in court in a gray suit, his arrogant attitude replaced by resigned weariness. The months of pretrial detention and the crushing burden of evidence had taken their toll. Prosecutor Dr. Klaus Weber methodically presented the case against Kasemi. The defendant Mahmoud Kasemi built a system of terror, he explained to the court. He used the most basic human needs for love, closeness, and belonging as deadly weapons. Weber led the jury through Petra's story, from the first online message to her agonizing death by arsenic poisoning. He showed emails, medical reports, and photos that documented the full extent of Kasemi's brutality. Petra Hoffmann was a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others, Weber said with emotional voice. She searched for love and found death. She searched for a new beginning and was systematically murdered by a man who exploited her goodness as weakness. The defense, led by Dr. Sabine Mueller, attempted a desperate strategy. She argued that Kasemi himself was a victim of circumstances, a man from a war-torn country who had grown up in poverty and had no other survival options. "My client is a product of his environment," Dr. Mueller argued. Decades of war, poverty, and lawlessness made him what he island. But this defense strategy failed against the sheer brutality and calculation of Qasemi's crimes. Michael Hoffman was allowed to give a victim impact statement. With calm but firm voice, he spoke about his mother. Petra Hoffman was not a naive woman, he said, looking directly at Qasemi. She was intelligent, experienced, and had a big heart. The defendant used exactly these qualities against her. He described his mother's transformation from a self-confident, independent woman to a confused, sick victim who didn't even recognize she was being murdered. The most insidious thing about his crime, Michael continued, is that he not only took her life, but also her dignity. She died believing that the man who was poisoning her loved her. When Qasemi was given the opportunity to speak in court, he showed signs of remorse for the first time. "I know that apology is not enough," he said in a quiet voice. "I know that I destroyed families. But I want you to understand I wasn't born as a monster." He told of his childhood in Afghanistan, of poverty, violence, and the struggle for survival. "In my country, there is no justice, no hope. I learned that you take what you can get." But this late remorse could not undo years of calculated murder. The court needed only 3 hours for deliberation. The verdict was clear. Mahmoud Qasemi was found guilty of quintuple murder, severe fraud, and forming a criminal organization. "The court sentences the defendant to life imprisonment," announced the presiding judge. "The particular severity of guilt excludes early release." When the verdict was announced, some relatives of the victims broke into tears. It was justice, but it came too late for Petra and the other women who had lost their lives. After the trial, Dr. Weber spoke with the media about the broader implications of the case. "This trial shows how international criminal networks exploit digitization and globalization," he explained. "We must adapt our laws and international cooperation to prevent such crimes." 2 years after Petra's death, Michael Hoffman stood at her grave in Nuremberg's South Cemetery. It was a sunny October day, quite different from the gloomy autumn when she had died. "Hello, Mom," he said quietly, and placed white roses on the grave. "I've come to report to you." He told of Qasemi's conviction, of the international cooperation that had emerged from her case, and of the prevention measures that had been introduced. "The BKA has established a special unit for international marriage fraudsters," he reported. "They use your case as an example in training." Michael now worked voluntarily with an organization that warned lonely people about online fraud. Petra's story was used as warning and teaching material. "We created a brochure, Petra's Warning, How to Recognize Romance Scams," he told the headstone. "It's distributed in senior centers, police stations, and counseling centers." The international attention that arose from Petra's case had led to important changes. Dating platforms had tightened their security measures, banks had become more vigilant about suspicious transfers, and medical personnel had been trained to recognize arsenic poisoning earlier. "You achieved more in death than some people do in life," Michael said with tears in his eyes. "That's not fair, but it's your legacy." A cold autumn wind blew over the cemetery. Michael pulled his coat tighter around himself and thought about the last 2 years, the pain, the anger, the slow healing, and finally the meaning he had found in awareness work. "You know what's the saddest thing?" he continued. "You should have been loved. You deserved the romance you were looking for, just from someone who meant it honestly." He thought of all the conversations they never had, the hugs he had missed, the time he had taken for granted. "I will ensure that your story continues to be told," he promised. "Not as the story of a naive woman who was deceived, but as a warning against those who use love as a weapon." On the way from the cemetery, Michael thought about the irony of life. His mother had traveled to Afghanistan searching for love and had instead found death. But her death had led to an international awakening that had saved hundreds of other women. In his office in Hamburg now hung photos and letters from women who, thanks to Petra's story, had recognized in time that they were being deceived. Each face reminded him that his mother had not died in vain. Mahmoud Qasemi sat in his cell at Nuremberg prison and would spend the rest of his life there. But Michael knew there were others like him, already assuming new identities and seeking new victims. The fight against international marriage fraudsters was an ongoing war, but Petra's story had won an important battle. That evening, Michael wrote in his diary, "Mom wanted to change her life and find love. In a tragic way, she achieved both. Her death changed the lives of other women, and the love she sought lives on in the care we now have for other lonely people. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled, millions of people searching for connection, for love, for meaning. Somewhere among them were lonely women just reading their first message from a charming stranger from distant lands. Thanks to Petra Hoffman, some of them now had the tools to recognize when love became a deadly trap. This wasn't the life Petra had imagined for herself, but it was the legacy she had left behind. A mother who protected other mothers in death, a woman who, in her greatest vulnerability, had helped others stay strong. In the modern world of international online romance, where dreams can become nightmares and love can become a deadly weapon, Petra Hoffman's story was both a warning and a beacon of hope. It reminded us that behind every scam was a human heart searching for love, and that it was possible to protect these hearts without closing them forever.